Hey everybody, welcome to our latest edition of Founders Talk. Our guest today is Mike Felix. Mike, Ben and I get an opportunity to work with you on mostly a daily basis whenever you decide to come into the office and instead of lounging around in your luxurious apartment in the sky, your deluxe apartment in the sky. But yeah, man, we're happy to have you here. So welcome. What we want to do is we just want to talk. I really enjoy, like, when I thought about you or thought about our current cohort, and Ben and I were sitting saying, like, who do we bring in that could really provide some wisdom specifically around the areas that they are, and they're all very early stage, right? And so our goal is to help these organizations to get to a point where are able to articulate who their customer is very clearly, and then from there to find really true product market fit. And as we define true product market fit is when you start to see some repeatability, right? Your value proposition is resonating, your service is resonating because you're touching on a true pain point. And then the goal is to get them to a place where they're able to obviously identify customers and say, and then also social impact, and say, okay, we just need to add some fuel. And so they're very, very early stage. And so you were a perfect person because you really deal in the space of helping businesses launch, right? Specifically online and digitally, and developing pipelines. So before we get into all that juicy stuff, I just want to give an opportunity for you to just be able to give us a brief history on, like, who's this man sitting in front of us with the beard from South Florida.
All right, I heard the word brief, so I'm going to be as concise as possible.
No, you don't have to be brief, man. We have 40 minutes to just have a good conversation between you, myself, and Ben.
I definitely, I'm looking forward to getting to the conversation piece. But yeah, so my name is Mike Felix. Obviously, I have a beard. You can actually kind of see it in my logo. I incorporated having a beard in it. Like Kyle mentioned, I work closely with small business owners on primarily launching. I realized that a lot of people a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, whether they were in the game a short period of time, or if they were in it for a very long period of time, launching is one of the things that I think a lot of people tend to do. Well, I don't want to say wrong, but sometimes you can do the wrong thing the right way. Or you can do the right thing the wrong way. But it's really important to do the right thing the right way. So my company actually was called SFG before, Straight from the Gut. And I was helping a lot of small business owners with building websites and creating digital assets to help them grow online. First phone call was, Mike, I need a website. His second phone call was, Mike, I need people to see it. Third phone call was, Mike, I need sales. So I realized that the sales piece was the most important part to be able to validate their business, really understand what core value proposition they should be focused on based off of what the mission of their business would be. And everything kind of sort of ties into that. So I renamed the company from SFG to Gorilla Launch. And so now I still work very closely with small business owners on creating sales pipelines, sales and marketing pipelines. However, I'm doing it more through coaching programs and courses. Yeah. So that's sort of what I do and how I work closely with small business owners. And I create various digital communities for different business segments as well. So I started an organization a couple of years ago called Black Business Orlando, which has grown to over 20,000 hyper localized, Black. I don't want to say they're all Black entrepreneurs. It's sort of like a community of Black people who, or community of people who support Black businesses in Orlando. I then went from that to growing one called Black Business Owners of Florida, which spans the entire state of Florida, North Florida, South Florida, East, West. Both coasts I've connected with, all types of professionals, political professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs. I've connected with government officials. All of them are in support of creating sort of a more collaborative and cohesive base across the entire state to share resources and to grow that ecosystem. So
no, that's good stuff, man. Like, so immediately what jumps out at me is what like, how did you learn all this? Like, because when I hear your background, which I don't think our audience really understands that, but when I hear your background, the question is always like, how did you get here? So like all the stuff that you help entrepreneurs and small business owners understand today, like where did you get that knowledge? Like what's the catalyst for all that?
Well, I realized that there's no secrets anymore. I think that's one thing that one of my mentors in college told me. He said, "Mike, don't think that there are ever secrets." And I was like, "Well, no, there's of course secrets." And he was like, "No, everything that you need to know has been written. It's in a book. You just have to be a good filter." So I consider myself to have a lot of mentors, and every author that I've ever read, I consider them my mentors. So if I want to see how they think, if I want to find some shortcuts, if I want to learn from their mistakes and gain wisdom from them, I read their materials. So there are some, there are some books that I've picked up and read, like in the marketing space. I read a lot from this guy named Russell Brunson. I read a lot from Seth Godin, and so they give me, a large, sort of, they have a large body of knowledge that I align with, that enable me to sort of communicate with, my clients, as well as to apply in my businesses. So I read a lot. I read a lot, and I watch a lot of videos, and I basically try to consume as much content as possible that I think is applicable to what I believe to be progressive.
Yeah. So you learned all this stuff, reading books. Obviously, did you have an interest? Like, was it like like you just felt like your DNA was like, hey, I love this, or was it because you needed to get a paycheck? Like, I mean, what's the fuel that drove your interest in specifically what you do now?
Well, yes, the paycheck, yes. That definitely helped. Um, but I think it was more so how I felt when I realized I had the power to have an impact. So I think that was the issue that I had when I was an engineer. I mean, my family is from the Caribbean. I mean, I getting a college degree was like, that was the big thing for my family. But I did not feel as though I had a significant enough impact. I was an engineer for Lockheed Martin, and like I was working on a screw, right? I was an engineer for NASA. I was working on one wire. I didn't feel like I was close enough to the impact, so I felt sort of, it didn't move me enough. It was when I created that first website and that business owner said, "Hey, like this is actually going to help me feed my kids." That's when I was like, "Oh, I thought it was just a website."
Yeah.
It was when I ran that first ad campaign and I realized, man, now I could keep that employee on staff. It was when I helped this one client, with this sales pipeline development, and they went from making a couple $1,000s a month to making a couple thousand an hour. That's when and they started to donate to different organizations. That's when I realized what I do has a lot more power to it, and it made me feel a certain way. So I dove head first into it. I said, well, there's no plan B, there's no fallback plan. I don't have a fallback plan. If I fall anywhere, like Denzel Washington says, fall forward. I want to see what I'm hitting. So that's what got me into wanting to consume more. And it wasn't just a cliche thing. It's the energy I get from consuming something that I believed would move me to have more impact and feel that way more.
Yeah.
I love that, because I feel like that little thing about I was working on a screw, I was working on a wire, which is important work, right? Like the guy in the shuttle wants the screw to work right? Like, but like, so there's nothing wrong with working on a screw or working on a wire for NASA, but there are some folks who are dissatisfied with that kind of disembodied work or disconnected work, and the idea that you could build something that you saw the direct outcome of, that like kind of personality trait, I think is why I really love working with social entrepreneurs, right? And whether those entrepreneurs are in the for-profit or the nonprofit space is really less important. The really powerful thing is that the folks on this call are take that energy of, I want to be connected to a solution. I want to see the outcome of my work. I want to know the impact I'm having is pointed at a particular problem. And so that's like a nuance between just general cause-based work or like public work or even nonprofit work. This social enterprise takes that thing that you're talking about, Mike, and points it at an issue. So I'm glad that you pointed that out, because it means that we can help you start a social enterprise in addition to all the other businesses.
There you go, Mike.
Absolutely.
So what's interesting is like you learned all this knowledge, and then you started straight from the gut, which I was always curious of what SFG stood for, straight from the gut. And then you made a transition, a leap over into guerrilla launch. And so did you, so in the beginning, I'm sure, just like any business when it first start, like, what was the catalyst? Why did you jump from SFG to guerrilla launch? Like, there was some pivot in there. And so what was that pivot and what inspired that pivot?
Well, one of the biggest things that I implement in my business as much as possible is a connection with those who I feel I'm serving. And so I ask a lot of questions. And what happened was when the company was called SFG, and it's me, and I have a business partner, by the way. His name is Amir Rashid. What was happening when we were communicating with our clients was they were telling us, well, we like you guys. and so we quickly realized that when we brought on board someone to help us out with the project, they were like, who's that? I want to get on the phone with Mike or Mir. And the reason why was because we just used SFG for it was just basically a business name, but it wasn't something that we wanted, that we were creating a brand behind. And it also didn't mean too much past the letters. So when we rebranded, the initial, so we actually failed at the business, right? So I'm going to tell you that now. We sort of failed because the thought when we went to guerrilla launch was, all right, so what if we're building these websites? What if we do this? What if we create a one-day launch for business owners? We bring them into a room and we literally work through the content development process. You work with them on content while I build. I start bringing in images, and within 8 hours, we would be able to get an entire website up. And we thought that it would be good because the biggest complaint with business owners wasn't the look of a website, it was the length of time it took to make it. And it was because of the back and forth. We wanted to have guerrilla launch be the process. We wanted to have guerrilla launch pads be different cities where we had people that were certified in building one-day websites. And we wanted to have guerrilla launchers, and that would be the network of people who adopted our process to launch websites and launch marketing campaigns. We quickly realized that there were some challenges there. So we still ran with the brand, but the reason we changed wasn't just because we needed to rebrand, which we did, but it was because we sort of had a thought behind how we could leverage that brand to create a more scalable model to implementing or to executing various types of creative work.
Well, so what was it? You said there were some challenges there, because when I think about the ability of a business owner to build a website from front to back, I mean, it is extremely complex, and oftentimes the back and forth that takes place in the process is because sometimes a business owner isn't as clear about or have a full understanding of what they're trying to accomplish. And so that's curious, in that process, what was it that was holding, okay, yeah, you get a website done in 8 days, but what was wrong or problematic about that process, or what you found problematic?
The part we did wrong was we were still trying to be creative. So it's very difficult to scale creativity. and we didn't identify that nugget until we had already shifted to sort of like a model that we thought could grow a little bit faster and easier to manage. But you can't really, it's very difficult to scale creativity. What we needed, if we were to go back, which we are going to do, right? But if we were to go back a couple of years and say, what would we do different? We would do a little bit more, we'd pay a little bit more focus to the core sort of solution that we're actually addressing, which is getting them launched, and then not asking them what they want, but leading them to what is best. So there's a quote by Henry Ford. He said, Henry Ford said, he said, if I would have asked people what they needed, they would have told me a faster horse. And the same thing applies to people that you ask what you need on a website. They're going to start to think of just a bunch of stuff that they think they need, not knowing really what might be best for them. So going back, what we would do, what we could have done was to focus more on best practices, and then say, this is what a highly converting restaurant website looks like. These are your 3 options. And really create this pipeline so that if I was to consider them sort of like a gerbil, the gerbil only has 3 ways to go. You're not asking the gerbil like, hey, you want to go that way today? You want to go this way? No, like the gerbil only has 3 ways to go. And even after that, they only have 2 more ways to go. And that would have created a more predictable solution that could have ended up, productizing what that service would have looked like.
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
That's important. That creativity is really difficult to scale. I hope you all caught that on the call right now, because that's where we're at, right? It takes creativity to scout out and find that first customer, to understand what they need, to create the solution. But we have to, if we're gonna build a business on more than a couple customers, we need to translate that into a repeatable process, which is what Mike just described there, which was really well said, Mike. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, definitely, Ben. Because I want to unpack that a little bit more. Because obviously there is a right way and wrong way to build a website. And I want to talk about I want to unpack those right ways and wrong ways. So can you get into that? Because it's like clearly, I think what you're saying underlying is that the data, that there's something driving that this is the only right way. Like there are tried and scientific ways of building a website, and that you have understanding what they are. But, and like I said, I want you to unpack that for us a little bit, the right and wrong ways to build a website.
Well, so and not putting too much of a focus on the actual like website itself. Again, the website just sort of served as as sort of like a gateway to what we really wanted people to get from us, which was to launch. So an example would be like, if I was to ask most of you how a carburetor works, you guys would be like, I don't know. How does an alternator work? I don't know. Talk to me about how an engine works. I don't know. But you need a car, right? The challenge was when it came to how we were approaching, people getting a website. I feel like when you ask a business owner, hey, what do you need? And you keep the question open like that, what you're essentially asking is, okay, cool. You want this car. So, do you want the engine in the front or the back? Like, do you want, when in actuality, they want to get from point A to point B. So get them there. Ask them the questions regarding where their point B is, so you can figure out what tool can get them there fastest. And so when it comes to how we were looking at the delivery of solutions, I think we were in the weeds, so we couldn't see the trees. We needed to kind of get a bit higher, so that we could understand what content was necessary, what images were necessary. Now the other thing that we leveraged was the fact that there are studies that indicate that there's millions of unfinished websites out there on platforms like Wix and Squarespace and Shopify and Weebly, which are very simple website builders. So, but that indication shows that the problem wasn't in the technicality of building a website. The problem was in methodically looking at the fact that you need one and what should I even have on it.
This is important. This is really important, because what he's saying is that when his initial pass at customer discovery, the potential customers weren't even fully aware of what they wanted. If he'd have asked them, they'd have said what they wanted was a website. But he kept listening and said, no, you don't actually want a website. What you want is a business. And you feel like you need a website in order to get the business. This is important, right? For zero trafficking, because they may be telling you what we need to do is apprehend this one dude. And you're like, that's not really what you want. What you want is to end, right? Or for Moto, they may be saying, what we really want is this great shirt made at this cost. And you say, that's not really what you want. You have to keep listening, right? Abdullah, O-Town, all of this is relevant to where you're at right now in your customer discovery. And I don't know, Mike, whether that was intuitive or you had a process to figure out what they really wanted, but that's like it feels like a really key step right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You hit it right on the head.
Yeah, because and then like the business, which leads, I think, to the stuff that you really enjoy doing nowadays, which is development of pipeline, right? And it's like the business, like the goal of business, like the business needs to be sustainable. And so we talk about to our early stage entrepreneurs on this call, we say, like that ultimately our goal at Rally is to help these early stage entrepreneurs transform their ideas and existing work into sustainable businesses that create positive social change. And sustainable means that it's generating enough revenue to exist and to continue to exist and to continue to thrive, and not just try to survive, right? Which is completely two different things. And so to get there, you need customers, and you need customers who want to spend money with you, right? And so when looking, it sounds like when viewing a website, what you're saying is that you got to keep that almost at the core of your mission. Like, how do you get customers to give you money, and the website becomes a tool for that? And so can you unpack where, like, when you talk about sales pipeline, what are the components of that? It feels like websites is one component. But there's a lot of pieces to that. Like, what does that look like?
So an example of a pipeline would be, and we experience it on a daily basis. So an example would be like, let's take McDonald's, right? The McDonald's, I don't want to talk about the core of their model, but really they don't make all their money on the burgers, which is how they get you in line. They make their money on the fries and the drinks. Their real margin is on the fries and the drinks, but they get you in line with the burgers. With me, we realized that, investing in a website, sometimes that can be a hefty investment. And the challenge was that many people, they don't understand what the return on investment even was. So sometimes, because if I didn't sort of mentally create an ATM for people, they wouldn't want to put, like, if I thought if I created a mechanism for them to say, hey, if I got $1,000 website, I would make 10, then they would invest $1,000 all day, but they didn't know what that formula looked like. So a pipeline is, so a pipeline, and it kind of varies based off of what your business model is, but if someone doesn't know you, the first thing you have to do is sort of put yourself in their seat, right? And realize, like, how are they viewing me right now? And I looked at how people were viewing me, and it was, hey, I need something, but I want to kind of shop around, even though I don't know how to shop. So I created a little course called The Site That Sells. And the investment for the course is minimal. but I injected enough fear for them to realize, hey, there's a ton of website horror stories out there, and you need this course in order to not make a bad decision. So the first part of the pipeline is what would be considered the minimal amount of commitment you can make. And that could, of course, be that, in my case, is you giving me your email address in order to watch a 30-minute video from me outlining the importance of your website. So I'm trying to get you to think a certain way. The next step is take my full course, which is $47, and I'm trying to get you to pay me mind you, I don't even want to build your website yet. I don't even know if I want to build your website yet, but I'm getting you to pay me by educating you on what you should even be buying in the first place. Give me your email address, watch something that took me 30 minutes to make. I get you to buy a $47 course for me, which took me a couple of days to make. And then from there, it's a matter of asking you a sequence of questions and getting enough feedback to qualify you so that you understand what the return on your investment would be from getting a website made. That's now when I'm capable of presenting a high ticket offering, because I've already gotten them to think a certain way about, about what I'm presenting. So, to apply that in a more generic sense, a pipeline is essentially, you leading people through this journey, knowing and understanding how they're thinking along the way, but you're crafting, and you're sort of serving as that subject matter expert to ensure that they see you as the only solution.
Yeah, man, this is super exciting that you're saying this, because it directly, what you're saying right now is amplifying something that we're really working on our fellows with, in terms of what we call a customer persona. And so the fellows, like, you're clearly hearing Mike talk about things that are found in that persona, which the persona is a development tool that gives the fellows a clearer understanding of who their customer is. So it's demographic information, background information, something you touched on, which was you use the term injecting fear, but it is a tool that uncovers the fears that a customer has with a process or doing things. What challenges? What are the outcomes that they expect? What are the different things that need to happen for them to trigger to make a purchasing decision? And and what's really cool is that you're covering all of that. So I just want to just kind of double tap on what Mike is saying, and because it reinforces the importance of all of you folks doing that customer persona work that allows you to really understand what who your customer is, so you can do the thing that Mike is talking about to be able to develop that sales pipeline that leads to ultimately you acquiring a customer that allows you to become sustainable. Right. So I appreciate that, Mike.
And there's one last thing just on that topic before. One of the ways that you're able to inject a little bit of creativity into that pipeline is to create something that only you can own. So an example would be like let's say, let me say what it is first. So you can create things that enable you to be the only one to have sort of that method to doing it, right? So like me, I don't just market. I'm not just a marketer. I'm not just a sales coach. I have a method, and it's called the A.R.T method, A.R.T. The A stands for attention, the R stands for relevance, and then the T stands for trust. That is the universal pipeline behind selling anything. I have to get your attention, I got to become relevant to you, and I have to gain your trust. Now, the reason that's important is because if you have a very generic, sort of approach towards how you articulate what you do, then you're dropped in the bucket with George and Frank. They're somebody's cousin. If you tell somebody, yeah, I'm a marketer, they're gonna say, oh yeah, my husband does that, and it's like, no. It's not. Now you have to battle with what your husband's not, right? But when you say, hey, well, I have this art method that I apply to all of the campaigns that I run. Now that's different, right? It's now that art method is the special thing that you do. So with all of your businesses, it's really good if once you're creating a pipeline, or at least sort of, conceptualizing what it is, if you could create these things, these intellectual assets that only you can own, the conversation is a lot easier, because it's kind of very similar. There's this episode of The Office where they were interviewing for a new manager, and they interviewed this one guy, and he was like, yeah, so I have this 5-step process to increasing sales. And they're like, okay, cool, what is it? And he was like, what? I mean, if you hire me, then I'll tell you. And they were like, no, well, tell me, just tell us what it is. And he was like, well, I mean, are you gonna hire me? And so it was funny. I love The Office, but if you watch it, that was his bait,
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I really encourage a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, to create some type of intellectual asset that they could use to be captivating to their audience, so that they can understand they're not just, the generic business owner in a particular vertical. They have a method, or they have something that is unique to them, and they've coined it as something, so that there's more questions to be asked.
So it sounds like that art thing is that, like, that's really interesting. Like that seems to resonate. I'm seeing it pop up in the chat. Somebody has art ? Maybe I think she may have missed it, but it looks like they're answering, which is attention,
relevance, yes,
relevance, and trust.
Trust.
So what is that? I mean, that sounds like that can be universally applied to everybody. If you're selling goods or services, like that becomes what you need to do. So I think
that relevance thing is important too, because it gets back to the earlier point of really understanding what your customer is reaching for or looking for. And I like when you describe that pipeline, I'm seeing it as like progressively larger bites towards that thing that they want, right? So if they're presenting that they want a website, but what they really want is a business that works, you're turning them towards that thing that they actually want and helping them see how what they're presenting can get them in the direction of what they actually want. And you're turning them in small bites. So like what I'm encouraging on the phone is, once you identify what your customer really wants, think about how do you lead them to that in progressive approaches rather than all at once. How do you siphon off little sections of what they want, so that you can afford to give them something of a smaller commitment, which leads them to a larger commitment. So I like the way that you did that with the courses, and it might be something else. It might be a different way to get into composting, where they do an event first and then they move towards a subscription. But I like that, like, lead them on breadcrumbs towards the thing that they want, but it requires you to actually know what they really want, which is really good.
Yeah.
And even with the they, one other component of what it is that I do when it comes to, like, finding clients and customers is I like to create as much fertile ground as possible. And so what I mean by that is, like, I'm really big on forming communities of people who fall into certain segments. So like an example would be like I'm working with this one this one entrepreneur. He has a service who he basically connects musicians all over the nation, and the name of the company is called Emergency Musician. So if you at the last minute need a musician, you contact him, and he has a database of musicians that he's able to immediately, help you contract. So but the challenge is, well, how do you have that real time, like how do you develop that real time need? In order, his target audience are the musicians and the people that need them, but the conduit would be the event planners, the wedding planners. So the thing to do would be to say, well, how can I bring a bunch of these people into fertile ground where they can have conversations but still see me as the owner of it? And so, you typically do that through some type of online community, get them to, engage on, on different topics that you moderate, and you ultimately are able to have, and I do it with a bunch of, of my own stuff, but ultimately it makes it easier to have that conversation and that feedback loop with people that may fall into your target audience.
Yeah. Mike, I want you to give us the Mike Felix the 5 nuggets of wisdom, and you don't need to rush through them, and you don't have to come up with 5. If you come up with 2, then that's fine too, because you don't.
Oh, we're not hiring you. You got to give us 5, and we can't hire you.
Yeah, right. So we don't want you to give up all your juice, right? So, but I want you to give us the ones that the 5 mistakes that you typically, or up to 5 mistakes that you typically see early stage startups make when it comes to web development or even sales pipe development. And then if you could unpack each one of those a little bit as you move through them, and I'll keep track of them for you.
Okay. All right, cool. I think one of the first things that I see a lot of people making a mistake on is not really getting very clear on what success even looks like in terms of, their business, their impact. What does success really look like? And it doesn't. I don't like to use the word goals, because once I say the word goals, people start tuning out because it's like a cliche word. But I like to say, like, if you were to close your eyes, what would make you feel really good right now about what it is that you're doing? The mistake is they haven't really done that. That's the first mistake. The second mistake that I see a lot of entrepreneurs making is they try to automate too early. They try to find the easiest route to optimize versus doing the work to enable them to know what to even optimize or what to even automate. So like I mentioned before, it's easy to do the right thing the wrong way. Even easier to do the wrong thing the right way. You got to do the right thing the right way.
Wait, why is it important for them not to automate? Because you said, like, it's important for them to do the work, but why is that important? Like, is there, like, I mean, I think I know, but I want to hear what you say. Like obviously there's, like, by automating too fast, they're losing what?
Well, they're losing the ability to know if they're automating the right thing. Like I mean, you can automate the wrong thing, and also you can automate the wrong way. So an example would be, like, I had a client who they were willing to pay $17,000 to create a website to automate certain parts of their operation. But what they needed to do is just hire somebody part-time to do it, right? Because they lost a bunch of customers because they tried to automate the wrong way. Hiring is a form of automation. That's also something that I tell business owners. I'm like, hey, look, if you hire someone, that is a form of automation. You're essentially paying to let someone else do the work that you provided them a process to accomplish. The key is to give them the right process to accomplish, so right. Automation isn't just the software. I think that's a misconception. Like, oh, I need a software to consider this automation. No. If you have 2 people doing the same thing over and over all day, that is a form of automation. The key is to make sure that you're doing the right thing, so
okay.
So that's kind of, you can automate the wrong thing. People
so that's number 2. Any other ones?
I mean, did I mention being human? I think a lot of, I don't think enough business owners go through that exploration process to have discussions with their, with people that fall into their audience and gain a really thorough understanding of whether or not, what they're offering is in alignment with how people think. Because a lot of times there are disconnects. I like an example would be like I'm not a fan of Apple products. But
but you use
Apple,
them all over the place.
I use one. I use a MacBook. But nothing else that Apple makes serves me. But they do a very good job at understanding what's going to move people to buy and see them as a solution. People don't buy Apple products because they're the best product. That's not why they buy it. They buy Apple products because of the connection that Apple created for them. If you want a powerful device or you want a powerful phone, you get a Samsung, right? And it's not even debatable. Like I've had Apple iPhone users say, but your text messages aren't blue, and I'm like, that's funny. I just want to make more money, right? I want my phone to serve me so that I can make more. So that shows that they did enough discovery to identify what people are really buying into. And I think that's another mistake that people tend to make, or entrepreneurs tend to make. They don't do enough of that discovery to really identify the core of what's going to move people to see them as a solution.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. First, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, one of the things that keeps coming back on this call, it feels like we set Mike up, but we didn't, is that like the more successful business leaders and entrepreneurs that we talk to, the more they are enamored with their customer and not necessarily the solution. Mm-hmm. And I feel like so many times the reason entrepreneurs start is because they find the solution that they're in love with. And I feel like that's why so many entrepreneurial enterprises don't work, is because they can't switch from being enamored with their solution to being enamored with their customer. And so Mike is saying, don't automate too soon. Stay close to all the processes so that you can learn, right? Be human. Come close to it and learn and learn and learn so that you understand all the way who your customer is, what problem they're having, and you can tweak the solution. I'm not saying abandon your solutions that you're in love with, but you can tweak the solution to really hit the problem that your customers are having. And whether we've talked to presidents of huge companies or early stage entrepreneurs, the ones that work are the ones who just keep coming back to learning from the customer. They're enamored with the customer and trying to solve the problem. They're not enamored with the solution. They'll switch out solutions as they need to.
And what Mike is also saying is that if the type of phone you purchase is a indicator of the quality of decisions you make, then clearly out of Ben and I'm the better decision maker, because I do own a Samsung, and Ben is a fanboy of Apple
guys.
products.
That's my thing. I just want to be an early adopter. I just want to think different. That's it.
Like I said, I make the better decisions, fellows. So when you need to ask questions and get wisdom, think of that example Mike just gave you. Just look at our phones. I have a Samsung, Ben has Apple. So anyway, man, that was awesome. Dude, what I want to do is I feel like the fellows have a lot of questions to ask about sales processes and pipelines and websites. So what I'm gonna do is I want to open it up to the fellows for questions.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. That was awesome. There was so many things I was shooting back and forth with Noel during your talk, but one question that bubbled up is, can you give some vignettes or some lessons learned from pipeline development or website development in a B2B or B2G context as opposed to a B2C?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one of the biggest things that a website should lead their visitors to is a call to action. Really good B2B websites understand that like you are not going to make a decision right now. You're exploring. So B2C websites, a lot of times it's a matter of like sort of incentivizing you and then just buy. So, hey, I'll give you a discount today only. Or, come come check this out. It's only available for this period of time. But they're trying to get you to buy. B2B, you want people to inquire in some way. The outcome, it should be a conversation or some feedback or, or even a training. So a really good B2B website would have the ability up front, you clearly articulate what it is that you address the actual problem that you solve, and you try to describe or apply it to who you believe the visitor is as much as possible. The core of what you want them to do is to give you information. You need people to say, wow, I want that case study. Like an example would be like, let's say you want a business owner to understand that you can move them from $0 in revenue to $100 grand in 6 months. Well, download this case study that outlines how I did it, or an example of how I did it. You don't give that information on the website. You let them give you a little bit of information so that you have the ability to nurture that relationship. Low commitment. You ask them for a couple questions, and you present them with what it is that you believe, sort of fed their inquiry in the first place. That's one way. The other way is if you understand that that sometimes certain things merit a discussion, you can lead them to schedule a time to have a discussion with you. So like I have an example. I don't know. Am I able to share my screen really fast? No.
Yeah. Well, let me go ahead. I'm open it up. All right, there you go.
So I'll sort of show you an example of, well, there's a couple examples, but I'm going to show you a really small example of something that I do, right? I understand that I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and ultimately what they want me to help them do is to help them sell more. And I know that. So everybody that I come across, I lead them to this landing page, and this landing page gives them the ability to schedule a time to have a discussion with me. Okay. I have more elaborate pages that I've designed, but this is their opportunity to schedule a chat with me. What I have found is, even though people want to be able to sell more, the people that don't fully know me don't always want to have a discussion with me. So what I did was, knowing that, I looked at how many people were hitting this page based off of how I was advertising, and I started to look at what my conversion rate was. It was very low. I then took this page and I redesigned it. I shifted some things around, and I said, you know what? Instead of hopping on a call with me, I want to just ask you a couple questions, and I'll send you a feedback video. Okay? I'll send you a feedback video. Give me some information on the nature of your business, what it is that you do, whether or not you have some goals, and I'll ask you a couple more questions, and based off of your feedback, I'm going to send you a video. So there's two things to really kind of gather there. The first thing is, with any website, the big thing is assessing your numbers. How many people saw the site and how many people took action? It gives you a lot of insight into what the next step should be in terms of, moving them to do what it is that you want. And if they're not doing what you want, make a change in alignment with why you think they're not doing it. In my case, people didn't want to schedule a call with me because I'm pretty sure they were sort of like, hey, he's going to try to sell me something. So instead, I don't want to talk to you. You answer some questions, and I will take a moment to record a simple video outlining how I believe you would be able to sell more. So in a really good B2B, website, you understand those call to actions, and you're constantly leading people to it.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like, because I remember I had when I was in corporate America, I had a boss who made it clear that people hate being sold. Like, like there's a resistance to people trying to sell them stuff. And you can just think about it just as you walk into the store. Like, I don't know how many times, like I'm clearly at Publix to shop. Somebody will ask me, can I help you? And I say, no, I don't want you to help me. Why do I do that? And I think it's because there's a resistance, and when you face to face, there is that thing. And so the question he always poses, like, or he said, it's like, how do you have to think about how do you incrementally lower someone's resistance to being sold? And when I look at that form, that way that you redesigned there, you understood that, and you created a way to help lower that resistance so they can feel more and more comfortable with who you are, like the trust thing, right? And then when I look at the nature of your form, you are asking questions that gives you very specific insight on that customer, without that face to face. And so like it's really, really cool. That's really, really awesome.
And from a quantitative or sort of like from an empirical standpoint, that change, that minor change, did a couple of things. The first thing that it did was it 5x to my response rate, or my conversion rate. It 5x'd it. So for every 100 people that were hitting it, instead of getting 2 people that scheduled a time with me, I was getting 10 people that gave me information, name, phone number, email address, and they were answering questions. The other thing it did for me was it reduced what my time commitment had to be. My feedback, the first call to action, the feedback commitment was 30 minutes. The second call to action, which was 5x, my time commitment was 5 to 10 minutes, because all I was doing was, I have a tool called Loom, and I just record myself speaking. So the time commitment that I had to make was dramatically lowered, but I also amplified the amount of inputs that I had. So my database of people or leads that I was able to receive from that asset was increased, and I also was able to articulate myself as much as possible to gain that trust. So
that's good, man.
So I say all of that to say this: B2B website, call to actions, really understanding what they what they want to consume in order to move them closer to them seeing you as a solution. And ultimately, as much as possible, I would say creating a framework, or creating sort of like a digital posture, so that again, like you're not just the cliche one that's providing an offering. You have a unique approach towards doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Anybody else has any?
You built a lot of relevance and trust in that answer. Thank you, man. That was on point.
They might be calling you. Any fellows? Any other fellows? I mean, Guyana, Susan.
Yeah, I'll just go because I can give you a direct example. Yesterday, I was at a alpaca horse farm in Orange County, and I was there to try to help them. I was doing some composting consultation, how to improve their composting, and their main missions, their main goals being that they don't want to go outside the farm and buy compost from a third party. They already are generating plenty of organic material with the manures and garden trimmings. So it was just a matter of, knowing how to talk with them. And now I'm putting together a proposal, like how to kind of sell them on a composting system that, I would highly recommend. So I guess I'm just curious. I feel like I did a good job learning their pain points, but what would you recommend, trying to incrementally sell them on my composting system?
So there's I have a couple sort of responses to that. So I would say a really good first approach, or a really good first like position to be in, is to see that discovery session with them not just as an opportunity to sell them, but to learn how to understand how to communicate with everybody else. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like they'll talk to somebody that could potentially be a, you know, a client or customer, and then like their focus is like just on them. You learned a lot from that discovery. And so your role right now should not just be, how can I just sell them? It should be, how can I really digest what I learned? If you're able to really digest what you learned, you now can craft what your next discovery would look like, or you now know what questions to ask and how to predict, you know, what to say to 40 other businesses that look like them in order to lead them to at least seeing you as an option. Now, selling them really is based off of what they've identified as, you know, their pain point and whether or not it's something worth investing in. And that's me saying that without knowing what you asked them, not understanding, you know, not knowing whether or not you've correlated what their return on investment would even look like, you know, if it's worth it. But if you ask them certain things and you realize that they started to say the same pain point over and over again, you know, I think that's a really good button to press to say, hey, you know, like this is a really good, this would be a good recommendation, not just because you said it, but because this is how it worked for 50 other customers. You don't always have to use your case studies. So you could find examples of how various composting technologies or services have benefited other people. Use that as examples as to how your solution is going to benefit them. If, like an example with me, like if I find a website that I think can help, you know, that can help a client, I don't need to be the one to have built it. I just need to be capable of building it. If I provide them with a case study to say, hey, like this is a case where this was the problem, this was this solution, and these were the results. That was done by company Z. I'm capable of doing it. I'm the one presenting, you know, the ability to do it. They're not going to call company Z. I can promise you. When I first started out with almost no, like a zero portfolio, I used everyone else's portfolio. I said, I'm capable of doing this. They're like, okay, I like that. You know,
yeah,
so
man. Yeah.
Find case studies and lead them to seeing a solution, and then sell them on you being the one to offer it.
Yeah, I really like I really like what you said about using that sales opportunity as a way to learn about how to speak to everyone else. When I was developing Learn Jelly, the way that I was originally positioning it was about coding, and but I remember being really intent on listening to how the prospect was responding to it, and as a result, they were telling me that no, it's about, first of all, teachers were, I noticed that the teachers and people were very hesitant about implementing coding, and because no elementary teacher really understands coding, and it's just like this vague thing that feels heavy to them. And then they just kept talking about reading literacy. And it was at that moment that I realized that I had to reposition it away from coding being the primary value proposition to reading literacy, and constructing and delivering in a way that didn't that didn't burden or overwhelm those teachers. And I saw a dramatic increase in success going forward from that point forward. So I just want to double tap on that point. While we have a few more, a couple minutes, we have time for one last question. Anybody want to jump in?
I have a question.
Okay.
Kyle, Mike, you just mentioned, hey, this is Abdullah again. You just mentioned that you would use other people's case studies or how the things have been successful for them. So when you do show it to them, you said you guarantee most of the time they will not go to that party, but if they did, what else did you offer to them to stick with you, right? Was it the pricing that you were concentrating on? Was it the relationship that, you know, they have done it, you have not, but why should they be going with you? To get that same results, right?
Right, and that's, and going back to what I mentioned, you know, before, that's where, you know, you create your special seasoning to, and you know, that's that whole method. You know, in my case, in my business, I created the A.R.T method, which was an intellectual asset that I use within my sales process. A lot of it is, you know, like I could literally find a recipe for baked chicken, but I have my special sauce, you know. So so a lot of it is based off of you creating a special sauce and being able to articulate why it's going to make it taste better. You know, how you articulate that case study or how you present that case study. It doesn't always have to be verbatim. You can mix and match. You can articulate it in a way that's going to get them to understand fundamentally what the solution is leading you to. That's the purpose of a case study. The purpose of a case study is to get them to understand the case. You know, so you know, you could bring in, you know, various, you know, bits of information that's going to lead them to understand what the result can be, based off of how you would do it. You know, so if I found a case study on conversion rates and I'm like, hey, this company over here did this way, this was the problem, and they were able to double their return by doing it this way. This was the solution. This was the outcome. My sales proposition would be, I love how they did it. I'm fully capable of doing it, but I'm going to do this so that we could 3X it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's dope.
And I think for all of you, part of that secret sauce is going to be understanding how to communicate your purpose succinctly and in a compelling way, so that Tuesday isn't just here to retain donors, it's here to release nonprofits. So we feel like we can help you raise more money, but you and I know money isn't the reason we're into it, right? We're into it because we believe this mission is worth pursuing, and too much of our time and energy is tied up in releasing these dollars, and Tuesday is going to solve that problem for you. So coming back to your purpose stated in a positive and compelling way as the bedrock for why you're in here is going to be a part of your special sauce, all of you, and a distinctive from any kind of competitors or similar actors that you're going to find in your space.
Yeah, and I want to add to that as we wrap up is that purpose, but then also embedding that purpose into you as a social enterprise. You need to embed that purpose within your value. It becomes a part of your value proposition. And so when we get to that section, which is clearly on your lean or your business model canvas, unless you do the work that Mike is talking about, unless you're like understanding, communicating, filling out that persona, getting as much data, and listening, you're going to struggle with developing that statement in a way that's one sentence and super compelling. And so like Mike, I really appreciate your time today, your wisdom on this, and man, like maybe we should have got you sooner, but that's all right. You know, like we got you today, and that's what's most important, because the timing on which the information and the wisdom you've given us today was absolutely perfect. So I appreciate you, man, for showing up to our to this edition of Founders Talk.
Thank you.